I don't think I have ever come across a game that is as infuriating or as rad as Slave Zero X. A 2.5D beat-em-up that looks like it dropped out of a portal from 1998. Not only that, but the gameplay is an unholy alliance of fighting games and Devil May Cry. I'm not sure which dark god to praise. My money is on Moloch. What's more wild is the fact that this game is a prequel to a cult Dreamcast shooter called Slave Zero. Which, yes, is going to get its own video because just look at it. Big mecha go burr. But that's for another day. Slave Zero X was released February 21st of 2024 by Poppyworks. As far as I can tell, they are typically guns for hire whom are allowed to develop their own game. I sent them a few questions I had about them and their game. At time of writing, I haven't received a response, but frankly, I never expect to get one. I'm always shocked when I do. And frankly, with the sheer number of job losses across the industry, I wouldn't be surprised if no one was around to read it. Too much talking around game. Need to talk about game. Visually, Slave Zero X is firing off every nostalgia neuron in my brain. High fidelity 2D sprites on a low poly 3D background is absolutely my shit. Especially when that background is full of detail. The decaying megacity is juxtaposed with the opulent temples to the Sovkhan. Something about these houses of worship feels off though. And if the look isn't quite to your taste, there's a huge variety of filters and skins to be purchased in-game. The quality between them also varies in my personal opinion. Whoever is using the dot matrix filter needs help. Of course, this is all at the cost of upgrading your character, but I needed the CRT filter yesterday. The animations are immaculate. Fluidity is the word of the day to describe these works of art. The idle stance especially is pleasing to my eye. Every enemy is also well animated and detailed to a degree that matches the effort put into Sho, the protagonist. The character design is something else too. Sho and many enemies are clad in something called slave units. These are biomecha suits powered by dark matter that enhance the abilities of their users. Think Fallout power armor, but it's alive and melded with its user. And as you delve into the secrets of the Sovkhan, you find enemies of a more disturbing sort. Walking heads with halos, zombies with third arms, and what can only be described as walking amniotic sacs full of carnivorous worms. This is emblematic that the visual design is hitting my brain in just the right way of rad and disturbing. Even if we fall into the classic beat-em-up flow of new color means tougher enemy. However, I will say that the color choices were done purposefully as some of the enemies have attacks only available to that color and type. Like red riot troopers who throw molotovs or the ones in black who praise the Sovkhan before detonating themselves. I guess the only complaint I have with the visuals of Slave Zero X is how busy the screen can be at times. And that's more of a gameplay complaint than a visual one. My eyes are feasting upon everything that this game is serving up, even if my brain has a hard time comprehending it. The sound of Slave Zero X manages to take the bar set by the visuals even higher. I love just about everything to do with the sound of this game. The fact that the hit noise raises in pitch with each addition to the combo is chef's kiss perfect. I get the visceral sense that I am playing well hearing that. Although, my favorite sound effect might be these monks chanting Latin praises of the Sovkhan. The music is always on point too. It's a combination of drum and bass and industrial funk that hits the ear well during gameplay. I especially like the track that plays during the training mode. Good shit, Protodome. Love the website, by the way. The voice acting is far beyond what I expected from a game like Slave Zero X. I was expecting nothing and received gold instead. Everyone killed it in their roles. Songwon Cho hams it up as the ultra-American General Thornton.
Revolutions are sparked by patriots, not anarchists. These people, they see straight through you, boy. Unlike me, you lack commitment to an ideal. They know who to pledge their allegiance to.
But Jameson Price's Sovkhan is dripping with menace.
My hand sent 100 tyrant kings to their graves, and yet their deaths begat only more death. I could not kill suffering. Over and over the wheel turned until one day the truth rose up like a viper. Human is to suffer. And so I would cast aside that fatal weakness to become something more.
Our main characters Sho and X, voiced by Griffin Burns and Elizabeth Maxwell respectively, also hold their own against the over-the-top antagonists. I can't think of a supporting character who isn't fantastic either. Part of me wonders if a decent chunk of the budget was spent on voice actors, and another part of me doesn't care. It was money well spent. While the presentation is out of this world, the gameplay itself is in a weird place. Slave Zero X thrusts you into an extensive tutorial when starting a new game. One that is purely text, so you have no chance to intrinsically learn the controls of the game. The controls themselves aren't overly complex at first glance. There's a light and a heavy attack. These can be combined with a direction to pull off a specific move. In short, a 2-button fighting game. The complexity opens up once you realize light and heavy attacks can be cancelled into one another to pull off EX moves, the cost of which is some of your EX bar. When this is filled, you can press the pulse button to activate Super Saiyan mode. This will allow you to pull off EX moves for free while also healing yourself for damage dealt. Only downside is it doesn't last very long. Although it and just about everything else can be upgraded at the shop. Thanks, Cyber Morshu. Oh, and if you're stuck in a combo, you can press the burst button to knock enemies away. It doesn't work on bosses though, but it will at least fill up that EX bar. So will taunting enemies, albeit to a lesser extent. I tended to taunt a lot, but for a different reason. The sword has a couple frame hitbox that will send enemies flying away or jib them if damaged enough. Dodging is a necessity for survival, so you will be spamming that button non-stop, which is a shame when it costs EX meter to cancel into a dash. But I'd rather live to see another day than tank an unnecessary hit. In case all that wasn't enough to remember, there's also consumable items. These are various weapons that can be thrown at your enemies if you're feeling desperate. They range from an IED, to a Molotov, to a multi-bomb, to shurikens. And remember, all of this information is thrust upon you right as you start the game. There's no way for the player to internalize any of these controls unless they jump into the training mode before starting a new game. Let's be real, most people aren't going to do that. Their first experience will be a cutscene into a wall of text. That right there is going to turn a lot of people away. I have friends that would sooner refund than read. There's a reason why many video games have landed on instructing the player as they interact with the world and encounter new concepts. Tutorial completely absorbed, you begin fighting the forces of the Sovkhan. And it's glorious. Enemies become splatter. I chain combos into one another at a breakneck pace. I feel like a god of the battlefield. There are challenges aplenty, and you quickly learn that simply mashing is not the way. Slave Zero X rewards control, setting up combos and strings that'll keep the tide of enemies at bay, learning your enemy's patterns so you know just when to strike. Until I come to the wall that I must grind myself against to defeat, which is where my problems with this game begin. I want to be clear that this is some of the most and least fun I've ever had in the same experience. I can chain combo my enemies into the dirt, but a single slip up might mean I am getting tossed around at the gangbang. There can be so many enemies on the screen that it becomes difficult to keep track of what is going on, which can lead to an enemy I didn't notice getting a hit in, bringing me to the hit stun. The stun times are very long, which can be incredibly frustrating when you find yourself in an enemy's combo string with no means of escape. It's fine, I didn't need that health anyway. The lack of any kind of difficulty setting is especially rough when you are struggling for your life. I don't think I've ever had a game demand I get good more than Slave 0x. Shadow of the Erdtree feels much easier to complete. Bosses are obviously trials of skill, but regular enemies can be too. My personal bane are these elite hammer enemies. They have this charge move in particular that gets me almost every time. Look at me get bounced around. Combat in Slave 0x is often broken up by random platforming sections that aren't very fun given the controls. You default to a shuffling crawl rather than a full run when moving. This necessitates tapping twice in a direction or holding a trigger in order to run to gain momentum needed to make some of these jumps. I don't even want to get into the janky wall jumping. It feels unintuitive to be doing this platforming in the middle of my fight game. There had to have been a better way to break up the combat. I would have taken brain-dead easy puzzles over platforming, or even just more long runs with occasional bits of exposition. And then the game has the gall to rank you at the end of a level after putting you through a nightmare of shit. You put me in situations where I'm going to get hit and then judge me for it? I feel slighted in the most minor of ways. But then again, DMC elicits this exact reaction out of me, so at least they managed to nail that feeling on the head. But the final two bosses of Slave 0x are what broke me. I strongly disliked the last two levels and spent my time cursing the people who made them. Skip to this point if you don't want to hear about this game's ridiculous final boss fights. The first of which is so insane that I couldn't beat him for weeks. Actual, real life weeks. Which is made worse knowing that in order to challenge this boss, I had to fight through an entire level to get there. And my progress wouldn't be saved if I couldn't beat him. His first phase is a challenge, but it is nothing compared to the sadism that is his second phase. I have hours of footage trying to beat this man. Look at me get atomized. I ended up cheesing out a victory with rat tactics because I was so done by the end. And when he lay defeated, I felt hollow. So much anger and frustration without a satisfying resolution. Though I would argue that the final boss is somewhat worse because the first two phases are actually great. I had a really fun time fighting that boss. But then the final phase happened. The boss becomes a part of the background. Its hurt box is unclear, and I'm still not entirely sure when is the best time to hit him. There's a similar boss fight earlier in the game, but that one felt more balanced since I could easily tell when I was doing damage. And then I made it to the end of the fight like 3 times, but didn't know I needed to continue hitting him before a hidden timer ran out, causing me to lose and start this lame last part over and over and over. If I am ever going to play this game again, my cutoff will be out of vodka. Because fuck these guys. They drove me to despair. Despite my extensive ranting, I want to drive home that I still very much do enjoy the core of Slave 0x. Being able to combo enemies across the screen is still rad as hell. Look at this is so cool! I just think this game needs some tweaking or difficulty settings so your average human being could potentially complete the game. And so that I could actually beat it without hurting my hands again. Mashing and angrily gripping my controller did a number on me. The story of Slave 0x is that of revenge. Our main character, Sho, is driven by the loss of his lover at the hands of the Sovkhan. X seeks revenge for being tossed aside as defective by the Sovkhan. Kurapika is only alive because of his duty to defeat the Sovkhan. It's safe to say that revenge is a central theme here. That being said, the story is compelling in the sense that it feels like you are setting off to do the impossible. The Sovkhan is a godlike figure atop the dilapidated megacity. To reach him will require climbing to the top and winning impossible battles along the way. And there was a really cool moment where X proves why she was considered defective. If what's in your face isn't enough, Chronicles are rewarded by defeating bosses and secret golden troopers. These provide a lot of information about the setting while also detailing the relationship between Kurikara and the man now known as the Sovkhan. I would love to go into more detail, but the game is fairly new. I'd rather avoid doing a beat-by-beat breakdown, especially since I have yet to play the original Slave Zero at time of writing. There's probably a lot of little pop-offs that I simply don't understand yet, but I will say that the story of Slave Zero is better than average, even if the big twist is mildly obvious. The campaign is not all there is to the gameplay either. Once you've beaten the game, the Crimson Citadel is unlocked. This not bloody palace is a lot of fun. You start off from rock bottom and face off against increasingly difficult waves of enemies, including my nemesis. I get he's the Virgil to my Dante, but damn it if I don't hate seeing this man in any context now. I only ran the Citadel twice, but wasn't able to get past Adavatka on either run. But judging from the rumors and the patch notes, there's a 300% speed super boss at the end of the Citadel. Maybe I'm fine not beating it. In conclusion, Slave Zero X is a game with amazing presentation, but significant gameplay flaws. The presentation is flawless to me, but the sheer difficulty of the game at hand makes it hard to recommend. I'm still going to, mostly because I need this suffering to be shared with a wider audience. If you find that this game intrigues you in any way, I would recommend trying it out for yourself and leaving a Steam review if you enjoyed it. Slave Zero X is sitting at around 200 reviews on Steam, and I think it deserves way more attention, flaws and all. That's a wrap from me. I'm glad to have this project behind me, partly because of the mental anguish, but also because the footage was taking up over 250 gigabytes on my computer. I need that space for other projects, like betting on soldiers and big mechs. Thanks for watching. More garbage to come.